Walk down any British street in the 1950s, 60s or 70s and you'd hear certain names called out constantly. Derek, Maureen, Brian, Sandra. These names filled playgrounds, appeared on every classroom register and echoed through neighbourhoods from morning till night. But today, they've almost vanished. You rarely meet a baby Derek or a toddler called Maureen. These once common British names have quietly slipped into history, replaced by entirely different choices. If you're over 65, you'll recognise these names instantly. They were your classmates, your neighbours, perhaps even your own children or siblings. Let's remember 10 British names that once filled every street but have now been largely forgotten by modern parents. Number 1. Derek. Every street had at least one Derek in the 1950s and 60s. It was a solid, working class name, dependable, masculine, familiar. Derek was the boy next door, the lad down the pub, the reliable colleague at work. The name peaked in popularity in the 1930s and remained strong through the 60s. Thousands of Dereks grew up to become the backbone of British industry and society. But somewhere in the 1980s, Derek started to feel dated. Young parents stopped choosing it. By the 2000s, it had virtually disappeared from birth registers. Today, Derek is a grandfather's name rarely given to babies. It carries a certain vintage charm now, but it's firmly tied to older generations. The Dereks of Britain are mostly retired. Number 2. Maureen. Maureen was everywhere in mid-20th century Britain. Every workplace had a Maureen. Every street had several. It was considered pretty and feminine Irish in origin, but thoroughly British in everyday use. The name conjured up images of dark-haired, friendly women, the sort who'd put the kettle on and have a chat over the garden fence. Maureen peaked in the 1930s and 40s, remaining popular through the 60s, but like Derek, it fell sharply out of favour. By the 1980s, parents had moved on to new naming trends, and Maureen quietly began its decline. Today, you'd be hard-pressed to find a baby Maureen anywhere in Britain. To modern ears, it sounds old-fashioned, firmly associated with older generations. Number 3. Brian. Brian was the quintessential British male name for decades. It was everywhere. Every class had 2 or 3 Brian. Every office had a Brian. Every pub had a regular called Brian. The name has Celtic roots, but became thoroughly English during the 20th century. It peaked between the 1930s and 50s, with thousands of boys named Brian every year. The name felt solid, respectable, dependable, ordinary, in the best possible way. But fashions changed. By the 1980s, Brian was in steep decline. Younger parents found it dull, dated, and too common. Number 4. Sandra. Often shortened to Sandy, Sandra was tremendously popular from the 1940s through the 60s. It felt modern, breezy, and slightly American when it first appeared, even a little exotic. Every school had multiple Sandras. They were our classmates, our neighbours, our friends' mothers, and later, our colleagues at work. The name carried a certain brightness and warmth. Sandras were thought to be friendly, capable, and outgoing, the sort of people who lit up a room. Number 5. Graham. Sometimes spelled Graham, this was a name that carried quiet strength. It sounded respectable, slightly Scottish, and unmistakably dependable. Every neighbourhood had at least one Graham, the sort of man who'd help you move furniture, fix your fence, or lend you a set of tools without hesitation. Graham was never flashy. It had a calm, reliable dignity about it, saw it as solid and mature a name a boy could grow into. But as naming fashions shifted, Graham began its long, slow fade. Today, it's rare to meet a Graham under 50. Modern parents see it as old-fashioned, too formal, too plain, lacking the crisp energy of current names. It doesn't fit the trend toward short, bright names or the soft, lyrical one that dominate today's nurseries. Number 6. Sharon. Sharon exploded in popularity during the 1960s and 70s. It felt modern, vibrant, even a little glamorous, influenced by American films, pop culture, and Hollywood stars. Every school in 70s, Britain had several Sharon. They filled classrooms, playgrounds, and office typing pools across the country. Parents loved it because it sounded fresh, a break from the older, more traditional names of their parents' generation. But Sharon's reign was brief and intense. By the 1980s, it was already on the decline. And by the 90s, it had unfortunately picked up some cultural baggage used in comedy sketches and tabloid caricatures to represent a certain kind of working-class woman. That shift in tone unfairly tarnished what was once a perfectly lovely, lively name. Today, Sharon is rarely given to babies. It's firmly associated with women now, in their 50s and 60s. The name went from fashionable to dated to almost self-consciously uncool in just a few decades, a cautionary tale about how trends can turn. Number 7. Keith. Keith was everywhere in the 1950s and 60s. It was seen as solid, masculine, and dependable Celtic in origin, but thoroughly English in everyday use. Every workplace had a Keith. Every street had a Keith living somewhere along it. The name carried a quiet strength. Keiths were the kind of men who fixed things, lent you a hand, and got on with life without fuss or drama. For decades, it was a name parents could rely on, respectable, unpretentious, and steady. But by the 1990s, Keith had fallen sharply out of favour. Modern parents stopped choosing it altogether. Today, it's astonishingly rare among the young. The youngest Keiths are mostly in their 40s and 50s, and it's almost disappeared from new birth records. To modern ears, Keith sounds dated, too blunt, too harsh, out of step with the soft, melodic names that dominate today. It's a name from another era, one that evokes muggy offices, football terraces, and a certain kind of British reliability. Number 8. Linda. Few names defined mid-20th century Britain quite like Linda. From the 1940s through the 60s, it was everywhere. The name felt graceful, feminine, and modern, a touch of romance without pretension. With its Spanish roots meaning pretty, it offered British parents something soft and elegant, a refreshing change from the heavier, more traditional names of earlier generations. Every classroom had at least one Linda, often several. They were your classmates, your cousins, your neighbours, the girls who grew up to become nurses, secretaries, teachers, and mothers. For a time, Linda was the perfect name, simple, stylish, and warm. Number 9. Trevor. Solidly Welsh in origin, but unmistakably British in use, Trevor was a fixture of 20th century Britain. From the 1940s through the 60s, it was one of those names you heard everywhere. Every community had a Trevor or two, your mate down the pub, your neighbour over the garden wall, your steady colleague at work. Trevor carried a quiet, masculine dignity. It felt dependable, practical, unpretentious, the name of a man who got things done. For decades, it suited Britain's hard-working, post-war generation perfectly. But as naming fashions changed, Trevor's popularity began to fade. By the 1990s, parents had all but stopped choosing it. Today, Trevor is rare among anyone under 50. To modern ears, it sounds dated, even slightly comical, a name firmly rooted in an earlier generation. The Trevors we knew are now the fathers and grandfathers of Britain, the men who built and fixed and showed up when needed. Number 10. Barbara. Barbara was tremendously popular from the 1930s through the 50s. It had a certain elegance, a name that sounded refined, classic, and respectable. With its ancient Greek roots meaning foreign woman, Barbara carried an air of quiet sophistication that appealed to British parents across the middle decades of the 20th century. Every street seemed to have at least one Barbara, often several. They were our mothers, our aunts, our teachers, the women who held families and classrooms together. Barbara felt timeless back then, poised and ladylike without being pretentious. But like so many of its contemporaries, the name eventually fell from favour. By the 1970s and 80s, it was already slipping down the charts. By the 90s, it had almost vanished from use. To modern ears, Barbara sounds heavy, formal, perhaps a little too serious, lacking the soft, lyrical tone of today's popular names.